A young famous, she fell for a driver who was actually the CEO of the media where she worked. The Manhattan sky was a suffocating shade of iron gray. Heavy rain battered the concrete outside the media tower, but the storm was nothing compared to the absolute frenzy at the main entrance. The air was thick with the smell of wet asphalt and pure, unadulterated rage. Dozens of paparazzi and angry protesters formed a crushing, inescapable wall. Blinding white camera flashes erupted like lightning in the dark afternoon. "Home wrecker." A voice screamed from the chaos. "Gold digger." "You make me sick," another yelled. In the dead center of the mob, Lyra struggled to breathe. Suddenly, a plastic cup sailed through the air. Cold, muddy coffee splashed across her pristine white silk dress, immediately staining the delicate fabric. She gasped, her vision blurring with panic and hot tears. Just a few feet away, a glossy black Cadillac smoothly pulled up to the curb. Inside the soundproof cabin, Adrian sat in perfect silence. He adjusted his expensive tie. As the newly appointed chief executive officer, his face was not yet known to the public. He was here to conduct a press conference. He was here to manage the catastrophic crisis caused by the very woman currently being torn apart outside. Before Adrian could reach for his door handle, the rear door was violently yanked open. A soaking wet, trembling figure threw herself onto the luxurious leather back seat. She slammed the door shut, locking out the deafening noise. Lyra pressed her back against the seat, gasping for air. Her chest heaved violently. "Drive," Lyra screamed, her voice cracking with pure terror. She did not even look at the man behind the wheel. "Please, just go anywhere. I will pay you 10 times the fare. Hurry." Adrian froze. He slowly lifted his gaze to the rearview mirror. He instantly recognized the ruined white dress and the pale, terrified face. It was the scandal queen herself, the exact woman who was currently destroying his company's stock prices. A deep, familiar disgust twisted in his stomach. Adrian remembered his mother crying on the kitchen floor years ago, destroyed by a woman just like this. Women who used their beauty to tear families apart for money. He narrowed his hazel eyes. "Look at her," he thought coldly. Another predator playing the victim. Outside, the mob realized where Lyra had gone. Dozens of hands slammed violently against the reinforced glass of the Cadillac. The heavy thuds echoed loudly through the quiet cabin. Adrian reached for the control panel. He fully intended to unlock the doors and throw her right back to the wolves. That was the logical move. That was what a ruthless executive would do. But then, he heard a sound. A quiet, broken sob escaped Lyra's lips. She pulled her knees to her chest, burying her face in her hands, trembling like a trapped animal. Adrian paused, his finger hovering directly over the unlock button. The sheer raw agony in her cry caught him off guard. It sparked a dark, twisted curiosity in his mind. He looked at the angry mob outside, then back at the weeping woman in his rearview mirror. Instead of unlocking the doors, Adrian pressed the central locking system. A sharp click echoed through the car. He shifted the gear into drive. His foot pressed down hard on the accelerator. The heavy Cadillac roared to life, tearing through the rain and leaving the chaotic mob far behind. As the city lights blurred past the wet windows, Adrian gripped the steering wheel tightly. The cat-and-mouse game had officially begun. The tires of the Cadillac finally came to a smooth stop. They had driven far from the chaotic, blinding lights of Manhattan. Adrian led her into his private Long Island penthouse. The massive apartment was a shrine to expensive minimalism. The walls were painted in cold, slate gray. The furniture was sharp, modern, and completely devoid of warmth. It was certainly not the home of a chauffeur, but Lyra was far too exhausted and shattered to notice the multi-million-dollar details. She stood in the middle of the vast living room, still shivering in her ruined dress. "Is this the company safe house?" Lyra asked. Her voice small and trembling, she wrapped her arms tightly around her chest. "They send artists here when things get bad. You are the private driver, right? What is your name?" Adrian stood silently by the heavy oak door. He looked at her pale face and decided to play the game. "Just call me A," Adrian replied. His tone was perfectly flat. "Thank you, A," she whispered, completely unaware that she had just walked directly into the lion's den. Over the next few days, Adrian played the role of the quiet, obedient caretaker. He brought her meals, he kept the heavy curtains drawn, and he watched her every single move. To Adrian, Lyra was not a human being. She was a depreciating corporate asset. Late at night, the penthouse grew incredibly quiet. Lyra paced the living room, clutching a large crystal glass of red wine. The alcohol slowly broke down her walls. She spoke out loud, venting her fears, her family pressures, and her crushing loneliness. Sitting in the dark shadows of the kitchen hallway, Adrian silently pressed the record button on his phone. He captured every broken sob. He recorded every unguarded secret. He planned to send these audio files directly to his team of corporate ghostwriters. His strategy was ruthless. He would turn her misery into a highly profitable, serialized media campaign. He would milk her tragedy for millions of page views, and when she had absolutely nothing left to give, he would throw her away. Lyra suddenly stopped pacing. She turned toward the dark hallway, spotting Adrian standing in the shadows. Her eyes were red and heavily swollen from crying. "A," Lyra said softly, her voice echoing in the large, empty space. "This world is truly cruel." She took a slow sip of her wine, staring blankly at the dark rain hitting the floor-to-ceiling windows. "They put me on a pedestal," she continued, a bitter, broken smile forming on her lips. "They lifted me to the very top, just to watch me shatter into pieces." Adrian stepped out of the shadows. His face was a mask of perfect icy calm. His hazel eyes locked onto her fragile frame, showing absolutely no pity. He gave her a slow, deliberate nod. "And you are falling, miss," Adrian said, his voice completely void of emotion. "You should rest." He turned around and walked back into the darkness, leaving her alone with her wine and a terrifyingly false sense of safety. The morning sunlight filtering into the penthouse kitchen was pale and cold. The expensive espresso machine whirred softly, the only sound breaking the heavy, suffocating silence of the apartment. Adrian stood leaning against the cold marble island, sipping his black coffee. Then he heard it. A muffled, frantic voice echoed from behind the closed door of the guest bathroom down the hall. Adrian set his coffee mug down silently. He walked down the corridor with slow, measured steps, pressing his shoulder against the cool wall just outside the bathroom door. Lyra was on the phone. She was speaking in a desperate, pleading whisper. "I transferred the money this morning," Lyra begged, her voice cracking. "Yes, all of it. Please, just keep everything quiet. Take care of the kids first. Whatever you do, do not let the press find him." Outside the door, Adrian's lips curled into a slow, dark smirk. Of course, he thought. Hush money. In his mind, she was paying off a witness, or worse, funneling her dirty assets to her secret lover before the authorities could freeze her accounts. His prejudice blinded him to any other possibility. Adrian instantly pulled his sleek smartphone from his pocket. He drafted a ruthless, encrypted message to his PR director. Push the new narrative immediately. Headline: Lyra's shady financial transactions. Where is the dirty money going? Put it on the front page of every site we own. He hit send without a single second of hesitation. The trap was set. Less than an hour later, the silence of the penthouse was violently shattered. A raw, agonizing scream erupted from the guest bedroom. It was the sound of a human spirit completely breaking in half. The heavy oak door flew open. Lyra stumbled out into the hallway, clutching her phone so hard her knuckles were bone white. The glowing screen displayed the newly published article. Her face was entirely drained of color. She was hyperventilating, her eyes wide with sheer, unadulterated terror. "They know," she gasped, struggling to pull air into her lungs. "They are going to find him." Before Adrian could say a single word, she lunged forward. Lyra threw herself directly into his chest. She wrapped her arms tightly around his torso, burying her tear-soaked face into his dark sweater. She sobbed uncontrollably, her entire body shaking with violent tremors. Adrian froze completely. His body went as rigid as a stone statue. This was not part of his calculation. He was the architect of her destruction, yet she was holding on to him like he was her only lifeline in a drowning sea. He felt the frantic, heavy beating of her heart against his chest. He smelled the faint, clean scent of her vanilla shampoo, mixed with the salty metallic tang of her tears. Slowly, instinctively, Adrian raised his right arm. He wanted to wrap it around her trembling shoulders. He wanted to tell her she was safe, but the moment his hand hovered over her back, he caught himself. He remembered who he was and what he had just done to her. Adrian squeezed his eyes shut. He pulled his arm back and clenched his hand into a tight, trembling fist at his side. As she continued to cry into his chest, the iron-clad walls of his prejudice finally began to crack. Predators did not break like this. Liars did not weep with this level of pure, unfiltered agony over missing money. A terrifying realization crept into the cold CEO's mind. What if she is not the villain of this story? The heavy Cadillac rolled to a stop outside a crumbling brick building in the deep suburbs. The faded sign above the entrance read, St. Jude's Children's Care. Lyra stepped out of the car, hiding her face under a dark, oversized hoodie. She clutched a heavy canvas bag tightly to her chest. "Wait here, eh?" she murmured, hurrying up the cracked concrete steps. But Adrian did not wait. A gnawing, uncomfortable feeling twisted in his gut. He killed the engine, stepped out into the damp afternoon air, and quietly followed her inside. He tracked her down a dimly lit, sterile-smelling hallway. She slipped into a small administrative office. Adrian stopped just outside, peering through the slight gap in the wooden door. Inside, an elderly man in a faded white coat sat behind a cluttered desk. He looked up at Lyra with deep, sorrowful eyes. "Lyra, my dear," the doctor said softly, "you shouldn't have come. If the press finds out, this is where the money is going." "I don't care about the press anymore," Lyra interrupted. She reached into her canvas bag, pulling out stacks of children's books and basic medical supplies. Then, her hand moved to her right ring finger. Adrian watched, his breath hitching in his throat. Lyra slowly slid off the massive diamond ring. It was the exact ring the media claimed was a dirty gift from her billionaire lover. She placed the glittering diamond gently onto the doctor's desk. "Sell it," Lyra said firmly. "Sell it today. We have to keep the school project alive for these kids." "Lyra, no," the doctor sighed. "You have lost your entire career. I can survive a scandal," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They cannot survive without this clinic." Outside the door, the truth hit Adrian like a physical blow to the chest. The sugar daddy was a philanthropic partner. The hush money was a lifeline for sick children. He had been crucifying an innocent woman. Hours later, the atmosphere inside the media tower's top-floor boardroom was electric. The city lights of Manhattan glittered far below the floor-to-ceiling glass walls. Adrian sat at the head of the long mahogany table. His face was an unreadable mask, but his blood was boiling. "The engagement metrics are phenomenal, sir," the PR director said, pointing a laser at the glowing projector screen. "The public hates her. Now, to spark round two, we have the leaked video of the fake confrontation with the billionaire's wife." The PR director smiled a greedy, shark-like smile. "We drop this at midnight. It will completely bury her." Adrian stared at the glowing screen. He saw Lyra's face, plastered next to headlines he had personally authorized. A violent wave of self-hatred washed over him. He was not a righteous punisher. He was the monster in the dark. Bang! The deafening sound echoed through the boardroom. Adrian slammed his palms flat against the heavy mahogany table. He slowly stood up, towering over the terrified executives. The room fell into absolute, dead silence. "Kill it," Adrian commanded. His voice was dangerously low, vibrating with lethal authority. The PR director blinked in confusion. "Sir, the revenue projections." I said, "Kill the story," Adrian roared, his hazel eyes blazing with a terrifying fury. He glared at every single executive in the room. "Stop all articles about Lyra. Take down the trending tags. Kill the fake video." He leaned forward, his voice dropping into a deadly whisper. "If anyone in this building dares to publish another word about her, you will be out on the street tomorrow. Am I understood?" For the first time in his life, the cold-blooded CEO was using his ruthless power not to destroy, but to protect his prey. The endless black ocean crashed violently against the concrete seawall. A biting, salty wind whipped through the dark night. The heavy black Cadillac sat parked at the very edge of the water. The engine was turned off, but the wide metal hood was still radiating a comforting heat against the freezing air. Adrian and Lyra sat side by side on the hood of the car. Several empty, crushed aluminum beer cans were scattered around them. Lyra took a long sip from her open can. She was heavily intoxicated. The alcohol had completely melted away her thick, protective armor. There were no cameras here. There were no flashing lights. There was only the dark ocean and the quiet man sitting next to her. She sighed softly, letting her heavy head fall onto Adrian's wide shoulder. Adrian stiffened for a fraction of a second. Then, he slowly relaxed, allowing her to rest against his body. He held his own half-empty beer can, staring out into the pitch-black horizon. The guilt in his chest was a heavy, suffocating anchor. "You know what the funniest part of all this is, eh?" Lyra whispered. Her words were slightly slurred, mixing with the sound of the crashing waves. Adrian did not look at her. "What is it?" he asked softly. "The whole world thinks I am some powerful, untouchable queen," she murmured, closing her eyes. But when the storm actually hit, every single person ran away. The fans, the friends, my agency. She shifted closer to him, seeking his body heat in the freezing wind. "The only person who stayed," Lyra continued, her voice trembling with raw emotion, "was a quiet driver I barely even know. You are the only light I have left in this dark mess, eh?" Adrian felt a physical pain stab directly through his heart. She was thanking her protector. She did not know she was leaning against her executioner. Lyra slowly lifted her head from his shoulder. She turned her face toward him. The pale moonlight caught the wet, glistening tears in her beautiful eyes. She looked at him with absolute, terrifying vulnerability. Adrian looked down into her eyes. The space between them suddenly felt incredibly small. The cold wind faded away. There was only the sound of her rapid breathing and the magnetic, undeniable pull between them. His dark hazel eyes fell to her soft lips. He wanted her. He loved her. Slowly, almost unconsciously, Adrian leaned down. Lyra did not pull away. She tilted her chin up, her eyelids fluttering shut in anticipation. Their faces were mere millimeters apart. Adrian could feel her warm, sweet breath brushing against his cold skin. He closed his eyes, ready to surrender to the overwhelming feeling. But right before their lips touched, a horrifying realization struck him like lightning. I am the one who destroyed her life. The thought was sickening. If he kissed her right now, under the disguise of a poor, innocent driver, he was no better than the monsters she was running from. He was stealing her heart through a fabricated, disgusting lie. Adrian gasped sharply. He opened his eyes and abruptly pulled his face away. He placed his hands gently on her shoulders. He pushed her back, putting a safe, cold distance between them. Lyra opened her eyes, blinking in pure confusion. A look of deep rejection and hurt quickly flashed across her face. "Ah," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Did I do something wrong?" Adrian slid off the hood of the car. His feet hit the concrete seawall. He turned his back to her, unable to look at the pure heartbreak in her eyes. His hands curled into tight fists. He hated himself more than he had ever hated anyone in his entire life. "You did nothing wrong," Adrian said, his voice thick with agony and intense self-loathing. He turned his head slightly, speaking over his shoulder into the howling wind. "You deserve someone real, Lyra," Adrian whispered, the crushing weight of his sins echoing in every single word. "Not a fraud like me." The glaring white lights of the penthouse illuminated every sharp corner of the living room. The air inside the apartment was no longer a safe haven. It was pulled incredibly tight, like a piano wire seconds before snapping. Lyra was slowly tidying up the glass coffee table. She reached over to move a sleek silver iPad resting on the leather sofa. As her fingers brushed the screen, the device woke up. It was completely unlocked. She intended to press the power button, but the bold black text on the bright screen caught her eye. Her heart stopped beating in her chest. It was an open email thread. The sender was listed as the board of directors. The subject line read in massive, unapologetic letters, "Profit Report from Lyra's Downfall Campaign." Lyra's hands began to shake violently. She scrolled down the screen. Attached to the email were dozens of high-quality audio files. The timestamps matched the exact nights she had sat in this very room, pouring her broken heart out to the quiet driver. The heavy oak door suddenly clicked open. Adrian stepped into the penthouse, shaking the cold rain from his dark coat. Before he could even look up, the heavy iPad flew across the room. It struck his chest with a hard, violent thud and clattered onto the hardwood floor. The glowing screen remained brightly lit at his feet. Adrian froze. He looked down at the iPad, and the blood completely drained from his face. "A driver," Lyra whispered. Her voice was not sad. It was vibrating with pure, explosive rage. "You are the chief executive officer of the media tower." Adrian took a desperate step forward. His brilliant, calculating mind scrambled for a defense. His massive ego instinctively built a wall to protect himself. "Lyra, you have to listen to me," Adrian said, his voice tense. "I was just doing my job. You had an affair with a married billionaire. The media has every right to judge." "Shut up," Lyra screamed at the top of her lungs. She grabbed her heavy canvas bag from the counter. She pulled out a thick stack of white papers. They were official hospital bills and bank ledgers. With all the strength she had left, she hurled the thick stack of documents directly at his face. The papers struck him and scattered violently across the air, fluttering to the floor like dead, white leaves. "He is my father's best friend," Lyra roared, tears of pure betrayal streaming down her red face. "We met in secret to save the children's charity project. My father is dying, and his friend was trying to help me keep the clinic alive." Adrian stopped breathing. His eyes widened in absolute, paralyzing horror as he looked at the medical bills covering his expensive shoes. "You listened to me cry," Lyra choked out, staring at him with ultimate disgust. "You watched me break, and you people used my kindness to make money. You are absolute scum, Adrian." She did not wait for a single response. Lyra turned around and sprinted out the door, disappearing into the dark, rainy hallway. The heavy door slammed shut behind her, echoing like a gunshot through the massive penthouse. Adrian did not chase her. He could not move a single muscle. He stood completely frozen under the glaring bright lights. He stared blankly at the scattered charity papers on the floor, finally realizing the horrifying truth. He had just destroyed the only real thing he ever had. The main press room inside the media tower was a suffocating sea of cameras. Blinding white flashbulbs erupted continuously, perfectly mirroring the chaotic storm from a week ago. The entire country was tuning in live. The ruthless public was hungry for blood, eagerly waiting for the official termination of Lyra's contract. The heavy oak doors beside the stage finally opened, but the PR director did not step out. Adrian walked up to the brightly lit podium. He wore a sharp black suit. His face was pale, but his posture was completely resolute. He adjusted the microphone, and the massive room instantly fell into a tense, expectant silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adrian began, his deep voice echoing through the speakers, "you are here today for a crucifixion, but you have the wrong target." He pressed a small remote in his hand. The giant digital screen behind him flashed to life. There was no termination letter on the screen. Instead, massive images of official hospital bills, bank ledgers, and photos of the children's clinic filled the display. "The woman you have been destroying for the past week is entirely innocent," Adrian declared. His voice did not waver for a single second. "The billionaire in those photos is a legal partner for a children's charity. Lyra was not selling her body. She was selling her own assets to keep sick children alive." A collective, shocked gasp swept through the sea of reporters. The camera flashes immediately intensified into a blinding white strobe light. Adrian gripped the edges of the wooden podium tightly. He prepared to deliver the final blow to his own life. This media conglomerate intentionally fabricated the entire scandal, Adrian stated loudly, ensuring every microphone caught his words. "We edited the photos. We leaked the audio. We framed an innocent woman just to drive up our engagement metrics and our stock prices." He lifted his chin, looking directly into the main broadcasting camera lens. He knew exactly who might be watching. And I am the one who orchestrated it all. Hundreds of miles away, in a dusty, quiet diner near the coast, Lyra sat perfectly still. A cup of cheap coffee sat forgotten on the scratched wooden table. Her eyes were completely glued to the small, static-filled TV hanging above the diner counter. She watched the man who had shattered her heart stand before the world. Effective immediately, I am resigning as the chief executive officer of this company. Adrian's voice played through the crackling speakers of the diner. I have already submitted all internal communications to the federal authorities. I am turning myself in to face full legal prosecution. The press room on the television erupted into absolute chaos. Reporters screamed questions, pushing against the security barricades, but Adrian simply stepped away from the podium, offering no further defense. Back in the quiet diner, Lyra pressed her trembling fingers against her lips. A hot tear escaped her eye, slowly rolling down her cheek. She watched the screen as the police escorted him away. He was not protecting his corporate empire anymore. He was actively burning his entire kingdom to the ground, just to rebuild her sanctuary. The golden afternoon sun bathed the quiet coastal town in a warm, amber glow. The bitter storms of Manhattan felt like a distant, fading nightmare. Here, the air smelled only of the salty ocean breeze and heavy motor oil. Inside a dusty, open-air auto repair shop, Adrian lay flat on his back. He was tightening a bolt under the chassis of a rusted pickup truck. He wore a faded, grease-stained mechanic's jumpsuit. He had lost his corporate empire, his massive fortune, and his executive power. But for the first time in his entire life, his mind was truly at peace. Suddenly, the deep, powerful purr of a high-performance engine broke the quiet afternoon. A sleek, luxury sports car rolled onto the gravel driveway, its polished hood reflecting the brilliant sunlight. The engine cut off. A heavy car door opened, followed by the sharp, rhythmic click-clack of expensive heels stepping onto the concrete floor of the garage. Adrian slowly rolled out from under the truck on his mechanic's creeper. He grabbed a dirty rag, wiping the thick black grease from his hands. He looked up, squinting against the bright, glaring sunlight. Lyra stood there. She was no longer the terrified, broken woman hiding from the flashbulbs. After launching her own independent media agency, she stood tall, radiant, and completely in control of her own destiny. She slowly reached up and took off her dark sunglasses, revealing a soft, genuine smile. There was no anger left in her beautiful eyes. There was only a profound, quiet understanding. Lyra reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a shiny set of car keys. She took a few deliberate steps forward, holding the silver keys out toward him. "I just bought a new car," Lyra said softly, her voice carrying over the gentle ocean breeze. "But I heard the best driver in the world works here." Adrian froze, staring at the keys, and then up at her face. A slow, genuine smile finally broke through the dirt and grease on his cheeks. He tossed the dirty rag onto the workbench and slowly stood up. "I am not anyone's boss anymore, Lyra," Adrian replied, his voice rough but incredibly warm. "And my rates are pretty high these days." Lyra stepped right up to him, completely ignoring the dark oil stains on his uniform. She looked deeply into his hazel eyes, closing the painful distance between them for good. "I will pay you with the rest of my life," Lyra whispered, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Is that enough?" Adrian did not hesitate this time. He reached out, gently taking the keys from her hand. His fingers brushed against hers, sparking the exact same electric warmth they had found on the dark seawall a year ago. "It is more than enough," he answered. They walked out of the dark, dusty garage together. Adrian opened the driver's side door, and Lyra slid gracefully into the passenger seat. The powerful engine roared to life under the golden sky. The tires kicked up a small cloud of dust. They drove away from the quiet town, heading straight toward the sparkling, sunlit horizon. This time, they were not running away from the storm. They were finally driving home. Thank you for experiencing this journey with us on Soul-Stirring Stories. Adrian and Lyra's story is a powerful reminder that while the world can be a storm of harsh judgments and deafening noise, true sanctuary is found in sacrifice, forgiveness, and the courage to start over. Sometimes, The most beautiful love stories are the ones rebuilt from the wreckage of our own mistakes. If this tale moved you, please leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have the strength to forgive Adrian like Lyra did? To explore more deep, emotional, and cinematic tales of the human heart, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Join our community, and let us continue to bring you stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark.